Alright, now that we have our layout, let's write some code. So in the register activity, first thing we'll do is give it context. And then I'm going to initialize my elements in the layout file. And so it's text input layout, and we need 3 of these. So for email, username, and password, and then a button, private button register. Now let's initialize, starting with context is equals to this, email is equals to find view by id r.id.et email, and I'm going to press Ctrl D to duplicate this line and simply change this to username and this to et username, this to password, and this to et password. And finally, register is equals to find view by id r.id.register. Okay. Next thing we need is an on-click listener for our button. New on-click listener, and there we go. That's all the boilerplate stuff, if I can call it that, all the stuff that we're used to. And now here we are when the user clicks the button. So when the user clicks it, the first thing, even before we get to registering the person, is to collect that data. So we'll need the strings for the details they've put in, and that is, I'll call it email string is equals to, now we're using a text input layout, which is slightly different from an edit text, in that what we do is we say, for example, email dot get edit text dot get text dot to string, as opposed to email dot get text dot to string if we're using a regular edit text. Okay, so once again, I'll duplicate this, turn this into username, and this to username, turn this to password, and this to password, and that is that. Right, next thing I'll do is I will register the user through a method called register user that we haven't created yet, and register user will take in the email, the username, and the password. Okay, and now we can create the method. So if we click this light bulb here and we click create method, then it will ask us if we want it to be anonymous or within the register class. It's this second one, and it makes our method and also gives us our parameters as they should be. Okay, now before I continue with the code, let's first look at what Firebase says. Let's open our Firebase assistant and see what it says regarding registering a user. So here's the assistant opened. We'll go to authentication, because that's what we're doing, email and password authentication. So we've already connected, we've set up our dependencies, and this is what we did earlier, checking the auth state, making sure if no one is logged in, it goes directly to the start activity. And now here we are, step 4, sign up users. It's a very good thing about the guys who made Firebase. They wanted to give all the information in a step-by-step basis, and now here we are in the sign up new user step. So it says create a new create account method, which takes in an email address and password, which we have, email and password, and then creates a new user, validates them, and then creates a new user with the create user with email and password method. So what we could do is we could copy this code. This is actually the code that's needed to do that task. We could copy it, but I prefer, for the sake of learning, I prefer if we were to write it for ourselves. So the first thing we'll need is an object, a Firebase auth object, which I will put right below the context. So Firebase auth, and I'll just call mine auth. We need to initialize it, so auth is equals to Firebase auth.get instance. And now we can use this auth object to create a user. So within our register user method, I'm going to say auth.create user with email and password, and this of course needs the email and the password. Okay, now we could terminate there and leave it at that. This is actually all we need to do that task, to create that user, but it is best practice to make sure that it worked, as you can see, which is why this is a rather large chunk of code. We need to make sure it actually did its job, and to do that, what we need to do is add an onComplete listener. So I'm going to put a dot, and I'm going to say add onComplete listener, new onComplete listener. It's going to give me this default code, and here's where my termination will go, so I'll put that before I continue. There we go. And within here I can follow along with what they've done. They've made a simple if statement which checks if it was successful or gives an error message. So if I'll do this, I'll go ahead and put the else immediately. Then I'm going to use this task object that they've given me. I'm going to say task is successful. What do we want to do if the task is successful? Well, let's see what they've done. Oh, no. Here. What they've done is they created a new user. Scroll, and they updated the UI. So we'll do something similar. So Firebase user, and I'll call it user, is equals to auth.get current user, and then we need to update UI, but first we'll just go to the correct activity. So start activity, new intent. So if they register successfully, we want to send them directly to the main activity. Alternatively, let's just write the context first. Alternatively, we could send them to the login activity so that they could log in first, but for smooth functionality, we can directly put them into main activity.class. Okay, so that's if it was successful. Now let's see what to do if it was unsuccessful. We can simply make a toast just up there as they have done. In fact, for this part I don't mind copying. Copy and paste. So I'm going to put it all on one line. I can close the assistant now. Toast.make text, context, authentication failed, short.show. Yeah, that's fine. That is totally fine. Alright, so now that I've written the code, let's test it, see if there's any errors. So I'm going to apply changes. Alright, here's the app. It's taken me to the start activity. There's our very lonely button just sitting there at the bottom, and we're going to click that, and it takes us to our register activity, which by the way we should give a little padding at the top as well as a title, but for now let's just try and log in. So let's see, you can use any email. Okay, I'm using a project I'd already created, so I may have used emo@gmail.com before, so instead of going emo123, put my username and the password. Okay, something else I've forgotten. This should be hashed. It shouldn't just show what the password that someone is typing in. Alright, let's see if this works. So sign up. And nothing happened. Not even the error, which means just a moment. All right, so it actually crashed. Well, not really crashed, it just it closed the app because of a mistake that I made. If we go back to the code, to the main activity, this line finish, I mistakenly put it outside of our if statement. It should be, if we were to say it as a statement, just a moment, if current user is null, as in if there is no one logged in, then go to the start activity, go to this activity and run the finish method, which means remove this activity from the stack so that you can't go back. If we leave it like this, then regardless of whether someone is logged in or not, it will run the finish method, which we do not want. So I can make this change and I'm going to run it. So this doesn't solve the problem of why it wasn't registering, but at least it allows us to start from the beginning. So let's see if it will run this time. There we go. Okay, so now we are in the main activity, which means we are logged in. We have successfully logged our user in. So it actually created the user, but then it gave me this issue of the finish. Let's see what we can do. We can go to our Firebase console, which I already have open. Here it is, and you can go to our project and to the authentication part, and I'm sure if this column, here we are, exactly, emo123, that's the user that I created, and we can see it's reflected here in our console, in our authentication window, as well as a bunch of others, because as I said earlier, I've used this same project test up for quite a few apps that I've been working on. Either way though, we have successfully created a user, rather we've successfully created a registration module for our application, and we've managed to log in a user. So we have somebody logged in right now, but we immediately run into a problem in that they are permanently stuck in this application. They cannot log out. So that should be our next thing, learning how to log out a signed in user. For now though, I will stop because that's enough coding for now, and Brazil is about to play Serbia. Goodbye for now, guys.